Hey guys, I thought I would take a step away from the tables for a bit, talk about some tools of online poker. I wanted to start with Poker Razor because, two reasons. I think it's the coolest, and the other one is, I did. And I want to look at something in here. That's weird. I think I have the wrong net framework or something on my computer. I'm just going to be very quick and stuff here. So we're going to look at a situation I had. I don't think I had it on video, but basically this guy had a stack of about 35 big blinds. This guy was a fish with about 80 big blinds, I believe. Let's say it's 60, I don't think he had that many actually. And I was sitting with Ace King in the big blind. So what happened in the hand was the small blind posted a small blind, I posted my big blind, and the cutoff raise. He raised about 3 big blinds, and I'm assuming that the cutoff's hand for raising is something like this. He was quite a loose player, raising a lot. The small blind re-raised him. And I'm assuming that the small blind's range for re-raising him is something like that. Small blind was a short, sort of stacked guy, probably wants to get some money in against a loose range. So I'm sitting there with Ace King, and I have to decide, am I jamming, am I folding, what's happening? And I decided to jam, and I think it's a pretty easy play. I think calling would be better than folding, and it's possible, if you know a lot about how the people are playing post-flop, that calling may actually be better. Because when you jam, you're likely to get this guy to fold, but if you call, there's a decent chance he comes along, and you get to play against him with Ace King. Ace King, we can look at an equity calculator too, right? No, it's not here in this version. We can look at Poker Stove, I guess. So yeah, let's look at Poker Stove. Let's say we do Ace King against Jack 9. What you're going to see is that we have 64% equity there. What about like Queen 10? We have 64. What about 8-7? 62. This is going to sort of be the norm. Like, Ace King's really good if they have Ace Jack, 73% equity, because we're dominating one of their cards, and same thing for King Jack. But against all those sort of random hands, you're at like 63, 64% equity, and against a pocket pair like 4s, we're actually not favored with Ace King. And so because our equity edge isn't huge against the garbage that the cutoff has here, I think it's better to jam. We don't really mind if he folds. We're already winning 3 big blinds off him that he already put in, and we're ensuring that he's out of the pot. In this hand, the cutoff did fold, but when we made the decision, we didn't know he was going to. So let's say that he does call sometimes. He probably calls lots of pocket pairs. He probably calls Ace Queen, I'm guessing, because he's a very poor player. But let's say he doesn't call Ace Jack. Ace Queen, I think, is far too loose to be calling. So let's say he calls these hands. And he folds the rest of the time. And then after he calls, let's say the small blind calls, I think the small blind has to call with all of the hands he raised with. He's just put so much money in the pot already, and if the cutoff folds, then we expect the small blind to call always. Maybe the small blind folds sometimes, and that would increase our equity, but let's not assume that at all. I don't think we'll need to. I think we'll be a good enough play without thinking that that's the case. But really? I have no idea why this is going so slowly. I wonder if the recording software is using the same processing as PokerRazor. That doesn't make sense. I've used PokerRazor before while recording. Well, I don't know, but basically I could run that, and it really shouldn't take very long at all. And it would tell me exactly what I expected to make using that play with Ace King. And then we could go and just give me any hand and run it, and it would tell me exactly what I expected to make with every single hand I could make a play with. So PokerRazor would, given our assumptions about these players, tell us exactly which hands we should be jamming with and which hands we should fold, and so on. And yeah, that's the power of PokerRazor. How's that for a quick little synopsis? Let's look at Hold'em Manager next. Oh, actually, let's look at training websites next. I think I have Deuces Cracked open already, so I had Deuces Cracked open because it has a series on PokerRazor, if you're interested. Razor's Edge is the name of the series. PokerRazor is pretty hard to get these days, but if you can get it, Razor's Edge is a good series to watch to see how it all works. Deuces Cracked, it's a website with tons and tons of poker training videos. You do have to pay for them, and they're not necessarily better than the ones I'm making you for free. In fact, I think quite a lot of them are worse than the ones I'm making you for free. So if you finish these and want more stuff, you could go to Deuces Cracked. You could get in touch with me for personal coaching too if you want. Little plug there. Blue Fire Poker is another one. Deuces Cracked, I think, tends to be better for you as you're at lower stakes, whereas Blue Fire Poker has some extremely advanced content for much higher stakes sort of stuff. And then the only other one that I've subscribed to is Lego Poker. I'm not subscribed to it currently, but Lego Poker I think has a pretty good mix of like small to high stakes stuff, and it also has Curtains making chess videos, which are awesome and have nothing to do with poker, but I enjoy them a lot. Okay. Yeah, that's the big three training sites out of the way real quick, I guess. Here's Hold'em Manager. Right now we have a summary of that last session that I recorded, I believe. Yeah, playing 5 cent, 10 cent. So it's showing us exactly what happened. Lost a big hand there, it looks like, and sort of milled around, not making much or losing much. We can see all of the hands we played. We can double click on them and open up a replayer where we can review exactly what happened. You may remember this hand from the video. I think it might have been like one of the first ones I recorded, or was it one of the last ones I recorded? I don't know. Anyway, what else can we do in here? It basically tells you all sorts of stuff about your sessions that you're playing, etc., etc., etc. It's what puts the heads-up display on my table, so when you see the statistics displayed on the table, that's because of Hold'em Manager 2. And you have these add-on applications. Leakbuster looks at your stats and tells you what you're doing wrong, basically. Table Ninja is a keyboard shortcuts program for while you're playing. NoteCaddy takes notes, like automatically, about how your other players are playing. Sit and Go Wizard, I assume is something to do with Sit and Goes. I've never played Sit and Goes, so how would I know? Table Scanner, it's a bit of work to get set up, but once you have it set up, it will look at all the tables that are running, and based on the criteria that you've set it to rank players, it will give each table a score, and then you can join tables directly from Table Scanner. And Okay, we're changing our color scheme to Windows Basic. Sorry about that. And then Tilt Breaker, I've never used, but I guess it looks at your sessions and works out, if you play longer than 3 hours, you tend to start losing money. And then at 3 hours, Tilt Breaker goes, hey yo, time to stop playing. I don't know exactly how it works. It's probably more sophisticated than what I just said, but that's the general idea. Looks like we have a stat analysis up for me here. We can look at one of our opponents, like this guy was sitting at one of our tails, I remember. Do a little analysis on him. We only have 52 hands on him, so this isn't going to be 55 hands, so this isn't going to be very revealing, but you sort of get the idea of what sort of stuff this can tell you. Quite a lot. Why did the circles change size? I don't know. Hold'em Manager 2 has tournament support. Tournament support wasn't great in Hold'em Manager. I don't play a lot of tournaments, so I don't know how not great it was in the original Hold'em Manager. And I haven't gotten a chance to try it out for Hold'em Manager 2. But yeah, it's a pretty sweet program. And then Poker Stove, I've already shown you. You've seen this. Looks like we can see summaries. Looks like I'm down 3,000 over the last 50,000 hands. Rough. Also looks like you can see my exact statistics. I hope you're not going to use them to destroy me, but I don't really feel like seeing that somebody's 16, 13, 3-bet, 5% gives you that much to work with. Yeah. So, I did that already, and man, Chris Mintz, you log in and out of Skype a lot today. I want to show you one more thing, which is sort of cool. There are all sorts of calculators online that will show you... God, maybe I should have found this before I claimed I was going to show it to you. Because these are not really what I was looking for. This may be. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is it. So, let's say I have a win rate of 4 big blinds per 100, which is pretty solid. Especially at mid-stakes and higher, it would be a great win rate to have, but at like 50 no limit, I think it's a reasonable thing to be shooting for. And standard deviation of big blinds per 100, just trust me on this, that you're going to see like 60 to higher than 60. I think 60 is a pretty low-end estimate. So let's say we're winning 4 big blinds 100 fairly consistently. And let's look at 100,000 hands, and let's do it 100 times. This is going to show us our expected winnings. And as you can see, with that win rate, and this is not a low win rate, this is a normal win rate for good poker players. And this is not a small sample of hands, this is 100,000 hands, which is, well, last January for me it would have been 10 days, but for many people that's a lifetime of playing poker. Yeah, you can see that, some of these lines spend a lot of time below 0 and even end below 0 after 100,000 hands. And On the other hand, it's possible that you end up, you know, the same amount over the expected. This dotted line is where you're expected to be. But when I play 200 hands, well, I've been playing 100 hands in a video. So let's just look at what the expected results would be in a 100 hand video. Okay, that's not right. I have no idea why it did that, but apparently this is with like 100,000 times 100,000 or something. I don't know, guys. Sorry about that. Apparently this EV calculator doesn't actually work that well. Here's one with 1,000 hands though. So is that just 10 hands? No, surely not. That's 1,000 hands. There's our expected value. So if we assume that I'm winning 4 big blinds per 100 in the videos that I'm making, and I make 10 videos of me playing at tables, with each having about 100 hands, that's about what you'd expect my winnings to look like. So, yeah. Just trying to stress the idea that poker is a very long-run game. When you hear people saying that poker is just gambling and it's just luck, they're talking about something like that. Whereas when I talk about poker and I talk about it being skill, I'm talking more about something like this. And even here, of course, there's still going to be the chance that you end up, you know, not doing so great. So, that's a little tangent about that. Let's do one more thing, shall we? Yeah, I think so. Sort of laid the seed for the basic framework of balance in my last video, and I want to get really weird on your face for a second and talk about it a little bit more. Just by breaking it down very basically, the metaphor I use with my students is, if you imagined learning baseball, learning how to play baseball, you probably started out learning to play baseball like throwing a baseball in the backyard with dad or something, doing batting practice. You don't like sit down, well, you don't sit down to play baseball. You don't walk out into a baseball diamond and just play baseball to learn how to play baseball. Very few people learned how to play baseball like that, I think. And so in poker, it's sort of the opposite. We expect people to learn how to play poker by just throwing them straight into the game, and we almost never spend any time working on the basics isolated from actually playing. So this is a very basic situation that has to do with poker. Say that I can have the nuts or nothing, and you have a bluff catcher. So I can have the absolute best hand, or I can have no hand. And you always have a hand that beats it when I have nothing, and loses to it when I have the nuts. It sounded overly phallic. Excuse me. I've been talking a lot the last few days. These videos, man. Let's say we have $1 each to bet, and $1 in the middle to win. And it's my turn to bet. So, the question I have is, how often do I have to have the best hand here? How often do I have to have the nuts for this to be a fair game, where we both expect to make the same amount of money? So if I had the nuts half the time, then I would have a better hand than you half the time. And maybe that's what you immediately think, that I would have to have the better hand half the time for it to be a fair game, because the other half of the time I have the worse hand, and so you win. But in actuality, because it's my turn to bet, that's far from the truth. Now, I believe in this situation I would have to have the best hand a third of the time for it to be a fair game. And the reason for that, I'm going to just run through this, and I'm not going to try to explain it fully. Try to follow along. If you don't follow along, that's okay. I'm not expecting to be able to explain everything in free videos where I'm not actually talking with you and checking in to make sure you're following. But if there's $1 in the pot, I bet $1. You're calling $1 to win $2. So you have to win 2 out of 3 times to break even, because the math on that is 1/3 of the time minus $1, 2/3. Hold on. Okay, the problem is you're not breaking even. The problem is you're trying to make 50 cents. So if it's 1/3 of the time, minus $1, and 2/3 of the time plus $2. That's actually wrong. I'm wrong. That would have you making $1, which is... makes sense, right? You have to win 1/3 of the time to break even. There we go. Alright, sorry. I was saying the right thing. My brain just exploded for a second. So you have to win 1 out of 3 times to break even on your call, because 2/3 of the time you lose your $1, and 1/3 of the time you win $1, and you win the money in the middle. So say I have the best hand 33% of the time. What if I bet and so I always bet when I have the best hand, and I bet, okay, I have, this would be easier to explain if you were here. I have the worst hand 66% of the time. And 1% of the time I have nothing. Obviously, we have some rounding errors, but yeah. So, if I compose a betting range of nuts and nothing, and let's say I'm betting nothing 17% of the time overall, so I'm not betting 50% of the time. You guys hear my cousin coughing and like being extremely sick in the background? It's no fun. Ambulance came to our house this morning. He is not doing well. Not like a full-on ambulance, but a emergency care unit thing. Maybe it was a full-on ambulance. So I'm betting half the time, and you'll notice, okay, 33%, 17% is not exactly half of 33%, but that's rounding errors. I have a hand that beats you 2/3 of the time, and a hand you beat 1/3 of the time. So we're in this situation where calling makes you no money. That means 50% of the time when I bet, you can call and make $0, or fold and make $0, which means I win the $1 in the middle. Whether you call or fold, I'm winning the $1 in the middle. And 50% of the time when I check, you win the $1 in the middle. So what's happened here is 50% of the time I'm winning $1, and 50% of the time you're winning $1, and yet you have the best hand 2/3 of the time. I only have a better hand than you 1 out of 3 times. But I'm able to, just using the rules of the game, exploit the fact that I can have the best hand and make a balanced betting range where I bet with the best hand and I bet with bluffs in a proportion that makes sense for how big my bet is relative to the pot. So like if I was betting 50 cents into a $1 pot, you'd only have to pay 50 cents to win $2, so you'd only have to win 1 out of 4 times. So I'd have to have the best hand 3 out of 4 times and only bluff 1 out of 4 times. I'd have to be at like 38%/12%. 37.5%/12.5% in that case. But yeah, I make this balanced bet, and you can't call or fold. They're both, neither of them's making you any money. And yeah. Now, what I was saying about being balanced is this is a balanced betting range. If I only bet nothing 10% of the time, for example, you still can't call. In fact, now calling is worse. You're making maybe, I don't know exactly, but you're losing like 15 cents on a call. Now calling is worse for you. But the thing is, I'm only betting 43% of the time now, which means 57% of the time you're winning the pot. So the fact that I'm bluffing less got me absolutely nothing. Unless you make a mistake and call, which, you know, at a poker table you might decide to bluff less because you think somebody's going to make a mistake and call. But theoretically, if you know that calling is bad, you're not going to do that. As long as you don't do that, I've made the situation just worse for me. Now I'm only winning the dollar 43% of the time. Now you're winning the dollar 57% of the time. So now you're doing much better than before. And what about if I bluff too much? What about if I bet with nothing 25% of the time? Well, now you're going to be making some money if you call. Quite a lot of money, actually, if I go all the way up to 25%. Let's just say 20%. Let's say, I don't know exactly how much you'd make, but maybe 20 cents. So now, 53% of the time, you're making 20 cents. You're making 20 cents, which means I'm still getting 80 cents that's in the middle, but I'm not getting 80 cents often enough to make up for the fact that it's 80 cents instead of a full $1, which I would have been able to get if I was only betting 50% of the time. Obviously the math here is wrong, but you understand the approximations. And so it's only 47% of the time that you get the full $1 when I give up, but you're making more money overall because you get money some of the times that I bet. So those are two ways that you can be unbalanced and your opponent can, make more money because of that. Being balanced means playing a defensive style where your opponent can make as little money as possible. And whenever you adjust away from being balanced to exploit your opponent, like I do all sorts of stuff which is not game theoretically correct for poker when I'm playing against a bad player. every time I do that, my opponent has more opportunity to actually make money off me than he would if I was playing a balanced style. So a person who's absolutely terrible at poker is given far, far more opportunities to make a ton of money off me than if I was playing against an extremely good player. Because against an extremely good player, I'd be trying to play a defensive, balanced style, and there wouldn't be that much that the really good player could do to take money. Now, of course, the key point is that the bad player doesn't know how to take the money off me, and so it's okay. I'm still the one winning, but it is true. What about if you do something weird, like only bet half the time you have a real hand? This is something that's very common at small stakes. People don't bet all the time for value. Well, one of the things that happens is now you can't bluff as much, because you have to be bluffing half as often as you're betting for value. And so now we're at 24% of the time. I win the dollar. But that leaves 76% of the time where the ball's in your court, basically. And I'm going to show down the best hand sometimes, but in this situation, 60% of the time, you're going to win the pot. So 60% of the time, you win the $1 in the middle, and it should be 16% of the time. When I check, I win $1 in the middle. So failing to value bet as much as you can when you have the best hand is again hampering your ability to win. We're at a situation now where I'm winning $1 40% of the time, my opponent's winning $1 60% of the time. And I'm still doing better than I would be if I never bet, because I only have the best hand 33% of the time, remember, so winning 40% you may think sounds pretty good. But clearly I'm doing worse than I could be if I was playing a proper balanced style. A lot of people do this at the smaller stakes, don't value bet well enough, and at higher stakes. And of course poker is much more complicated than the situation I have where it's nuts or nothing. Like, your value bet isn't necessarily going to win every time you get called. Your value bet might only win 52% of the time that it gets called, but that's still better than checking, because you're still making more than half of the money that you're adding to the pot. Poor cousin. Alright, so there's something to think about, and I'll be talking a little more about being balanced in later videos, but you know, it's not necessarily something you're even aiming to do at a poker table. At a poker table, if you're struggling to be balanced, it may mean that you're at a really tough poker table and you should try to find an easier one. Cousin commentary for end of video. Alright. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it was a little dry, but important information. And I will see you around.